you have a Jeff Zucker story, the former head of CNN. What happened?
I mean, I had very limited interactions with him over there. I was actually always surprised when he knew my name and would come over to talk to me when I was a short-term contributor over at CNN. But he did, and on the terrors and stuff, a few times he came over and he was like, "That was really good. You're really astute. You really know your stuff." And I was like, "Well, of course. I mean, Come on, I'm Buck Sexton. Give me a break." But then, no big deal. But whatever. But I remember they asked to extend me after the Trump election, and I was like, "This place has completely lost its." I was just always going in there texting my friends, "This place has lost its mind. Like they think Trump is worse than Stalin. I mean, they're completely crazy." And I was in the lobby because I was doing an HLN show for a friend of mine who was hosting a show there. I was a guest on an HLN show after I had said I didn't want a contract extension for them. And I had no TV job, which is like unheard of in TV. You're like, you don't want to be on a 100 million home cable network or whatever? No, I didn't, because they're crazy. And for whatever reason, Zucker happened to walk past me in the lobby at CNN. Last thing I ever got to say to him, he looked me up and down and he goes, "What do you think you're doing here?" Just like that. And I was like,
like in a negative way, like he was like disgusted that you turned down there.
Like I thought he might tell security to escort me out because I told him I didn't want to work there anymore. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was just like, doing. I didn't have a good quip or comeback, so I was like, "Uh-oh." I just said I'm doing my friend's show. They let me do it. Oh, I was never back on the show, by the way. I'm never allowed. You're officially banned from there, but by the way, maybe not anymore.
Maybe
Zucker
not.
reign
Now
of
that Jeff
terror
Zucker's
is over.
gone.
Clay, maybe we would both be welcome to try to win the libs over, to try to bring them to the side of sanity. They could have conservatives on there. Oh, you can't because of Fox, but I could go over there and tell them to stop being crazy.
So that could be one suggestion, would be to bring Buck in. But here's my thing. If you truly had some testicular fortitude, whoever takes over at CNN, you look at the numbers, they are an incredibly difficult spot. And so my suggestion, go hire Megyn Kelly. Go hire Megyn Kelly and put her in. I don't know if she'd do it. Put Megyn Kelly in for the Chris Cuomo chair, because you send an immediate message in the middle of Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon, hey, we're back to being somewhat sane. Megyn Kelly has a big fan base. I think she's done well with her podcast. I did it on Monday, by the way. I know that the situation at NBC didn't go well, but that's partly, I think, a function of NBC just being a den of thieves, right? I mean, just a cesspool. And so we know how good Megyn Kelly was in the evenings on Fox News, how great her audience was. She's fearless, she's smart, and it would send a message that is, we're not going to continue to be a far left-wing network that no one watches. The data on this, I mean, you just look at the numbers, Buck. I mean, Tucker and Sean have more Democratic viewers than MSNBC or CNN do in the 25 to 54 demo. I was just reading it in the wrap today, right before we were about to go on the show. So CNN's not even getting left-wing viewers. I'd go get Megyn Kelly. If I were fearless and I were trying to remake that network, you have all sorts of issues now with men, right? You've had to get you kept Jeffrey Toobin. You now are having to get rid of Zucker, and you had to get rid of Cuomo. Bringing in a woman, I think, is smart regardless. And you got to shake things up in a big way.
Just so everyone remembers this, to give you a sense of how much CNN has changed. And this was really, I mean, I remember growing up, CNN was around long before Fox, right? So when you thought of cable news, CNN was the 24-hour news channel until Fox came along in 1996, and it took a couple of years for Fox to really grow its massive audience, right? So in the early 90s, I mean, it was CNN, man. That was the only game in town for cable news. I mean,
People thought Murdoch was crazy to start a news network.
But Tucker got his start at CNN on TV, right? I mean, you think back to this, like this used to be a place where conservatives would go through, and I mean, conservatives aren't even allowed in the building anymore, folks. That's how crazy it is.
It is pretty wild. Do you think that's a crazy idea, Megyn Kelly to CNN?
No, I think there could even be discussions underway for all I know. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I think it's actually a smart move if CNN's trying to matter going forward. Here is what Donald Trump said. Donald Trump put out a press release since we started this show. And he says, you ready for this, Buck? Jeff Zucker, a world-class sleazebag who has headed ratings and real news challenge CNN for far too long, has been terminated for numerous reasons, but predominantly because CNN has lost its way with viewers and everybody else. Now's a chance to put fake news in the backseat because there may not be anything more important than straightening out the horrendous lamestream media in our country, and in the case of CNN, throughout the world. Jeff Zucker is gone. Congratulations to all! Exclamation point.
You know, that's actually a really fitting epitaph for an era at CNN right now, because Trump broke CNN. It was never the same after Trump. And that's why when I say that it changed as a place, I really mean it. It was ideologically left, but did have some semblance of journalistic ethics that it would occasionally. That went absolutely out the window, really openly so they could turn into an anti-Trump machine. And it was very personal. I was talking to Clay about this off air. Jeff Zucker and Trump knew each other for a long time. And Zucker decided that, he didn't like Trump and Trump didn't like him. And he really used CNN almost as a personal feud weapon against Donald Trump. And that's not a good idea because, the Trumpster knows how to hit back. But I'd also say this, yesterday I think I mentioned or this week we talked about people in media, and it might be just interesting for folks out there to know. Like I said, people say Whoopi Goldberg is very nice and a very nice person, irrespective of all the stuff that's been talked about that's been going on this week. Whereas Keith Olbermann is just universally known, left, right, center, as just a horrible human being. Jeff Zucker, not a nice guy, not a nice. So a lot of people across the media landscape right now are going, too bad for you, Zucker, too bad for you. So, Clay, I had said this morning on the Buck Sexton podcast before a lot of this stuff had broken, and then we discussed it at the top of our radio show today, that it was very clear to me that Cuomo, when he thought, if you come after, because this is Chris Cuomo now at CNN, you come after me, maybe have a little bit of a problem there, Zucker, a little bit. I know a few things. I know some stuff about some things. And that may have led to just the hubris of running comms for your embattled Democrat politician, governor of New York brother from inside a newsroom where you're supposed to. The whole thing was such a mess. How could he ever think? And then, of course, there was some other, behavioral stuff that they got into with Chris Cuomo. But how could he ever think he'd get away with it? Well, it turns out that he had probably pretty good reason to think he could, and that he would get his $18 million severance after getting booted from CNN, because here's the Daily Mail headline: Chris Cuomo's revenge, ousted host forced lying CNN boss Jeff Zucker's resignation by blowing the whistle on his open secret affair with staffer Allison Gollust while fighting for $18 million severance. Turned out exactly what I thought this morning when we thought we started the show. Chris Cuomo thought he had a little insurance policy, and he decided that he was actually gonna pull the lever on it, and now Zucker is out.
Well, and honestly, this feels a little bit like mutually assured destruction, because as soon as Cuomo goes public with the fact that relationship exists, Zucker loses his job too, and I'm not sure how Cuomo benefits, because then his knowledge is not very valuable. So, Buck, I actually go a step above this and sort of reading the Palace Intrigue analysis and wonder whether somebody wanted Jeff Zucker out too, because presumably Cuomo was saying, hey, unless you pay me, I'm going to blow the whistle on your relationship, which is going to cost you your job. And presumably it's not Cuomo's decision. It's not Zucker's decision whether or not to pay Cuomo. So I wonder if somebody higher up at that company decided this was their way to get rid of Zucker too.
But clearly they fired Cuomo for cause, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's obvious. So maybe at some level, whether it was, some of the in-house counsel or the other executives were like, wait a second, you're going to write this guy a check for $18 million? And it might have just been politically, internally impossible to do that when it was, again, surmising, I don't know. But look, CNN is a mess, Clay. Let's look at what's happened. Cuomo is gone. Zucker is gone. They had a producer with the whole underage, sex allegation of the cross.
Tubin. You got the Tubinator.
Tubin, the whole thing. A mess.
It's all a mess.